Hey there, welcome to HACKITVATE with Dr. Y. This is where we cut through the noise and get real about life. The messy, imperfect stuff we all deal with but rarely talk about. From chasing purpose to burnout and those deep aspirations you snoozed for so long, or even just navigating the relationships in your life. We're diving into it all here. No rules, just clarity, truth, and making space for the real you. Ready to step into your next chapter? Let's HACKITVATE together.
Sometimes it actually be that you're mirroring what they're going through, but you're failing to come to terms with that, face the reality about things. And in my first book I wrote, Chronicles of Being Mama, at that time I hadn't gotten a formal diagnosis of ADHD. I didn't know, I was just journaling out. I'm capturing my experience as a neurodivergent mom. One of the things I struggle with postpartum blues, as a doctor, that was really hard. To even try to slip it into conversation with my husband was something. And I kept trying to help myself. Eventually I did help myself, but I look back now and wonder, was it worth it? Did I need to carry all that by myself? And just even feeling, at the time, I didn't have many people. In fact, I hardly had anyone that I could really talk to about that, because there was this kind of self-inflicted persona I built. So I was like, overthinking everything. So yeah, it can be a real struggle. And I love that concept or quote you said Brené Brown made about not everybody's owed your shame story. Brené Brown is awesome when it comes to talking about and speaking about vulnerability. She's done so much work in that regard. Now, so in your book, let me show you. Oh, can you see your book? No.
Great.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, can you see the amount of bookmarks?
Yeah, I love that.
And can you just see all that? Like, I wish I could show you this smiley face here. This one I was like, oh my God. Oh, is it showing? Yeah. Can you see that smiley face I drew? You were like, oh my God, this is me too. Wow. Tell us about your book. You emphasize, there's so much, and I don't want to give away too much because you have to go and get a copy wherever books are sold. Yes. But, there were so many light bulb moments when I read this, and so much, what would I call it? It was practical as well as uplifting. It wasn't just the inspirational stuff that made me feel good. And when I put it down, I'm like, okay, so how does this translate to real life? No, this is not one of those books. And anybody listening, you should go and get a copy of Dr. Alison McClymount's book, How to Help Your Child Cope with Anything. Lovely book. There were so many light bulb moments. But you talked about, the importance, you emphasized that of a child's emotional development between the ages of 0 to 7. And so how can a mom on her own journey of reparenting herself, now this is a mom who is aware, this is a mom who has acknowledged that, okay, I'm struggling with this and I need help. And she's like, okay, I have to reparent myself so that these situations don't trigger my own childhood needs. So for some people, like my dad died before I was 18 months or 21 months. I can't remember exactly now. And the absent father figure was there. Even though my mom tried her best with all her male relatives, looking back now, I was like, this woman tried her best, ensuring that there was a male authority figure. But it's not the same. It's simply not the same, And I found out later in life, it was only at my dad's 20th year remembrance, the penny dropped that, this reaction I had to certain situation was an abandonment wound because of the absent father, situation I had. And so I had to reparent myself. And so when people did some things that made me feel invisible, because there were some situations that triggered those wounds, I had to learn how to not go back to the past. Because the thing about triggers, and you're a trauma specialist and you can speak more to that, is that somehow traumatic triggers always want to take us back rather than root us in the present or allow us respond to what we think can take us forward, So
Yeah.
how can such moms who have now said, you know what, we acknowledge this is going on. I need support. I need help. I'm reading the books. I'm trying to reach out or search for a therapist that really understands this, especially if you're neurodivergent, the extra nuance. How can she, on her reparenting journey, you know, still create that stable emotional foundation for her child or children?
I think in the first instance, it's to remember that the fact that she has done that journey, or she's even starting it, she's aware of it, she's already starting a good, stable journey for her children, because she's already, even if she's not going to do it perfect every time, she's aware of what her own experiences of being parented were. So she's done the primary thing that we need her to do, which is not make this parenting journey about your experience of being parented. Yeah. This is about you and your child. This is a relationship. I also think it's worth, and I think attachment studies and statistics and ACE studies and stuff are wonderful, wonderful data, but we have to remember that a lot of this is clinical data in the sense that they want to use it to prove a hypothesis. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that just because the data says X or Y or Z, that's a final stamp for the rest. So if you, for example, if you had a trauma in childhood, yeah, okay, the data suggests there might be a higher likelihood of X or Y or Z or what have you in the later life, but that does not mean that has to be the case. I think we get so bogged down in the idea that I have to do this because if I don't do this, something terrible will happen. Yeah. Attachment and child mental health is a lifelong process. And I think in those first 0 to 7 years, you set your intention. You set your intention to dedicate as much time to your child as you can, as fits your family, because not everyone can stay at home. Not everyone can, people work shifts, people work different stuff. You set your time and your intention. Yeah. And I read a lovely study once, which was of securely attached adults. And I think this will really help some mums, because I know it helped me. And these securely attached adults, when they studied them, I think Harvard did it. I'll find the study. Okay. And they basically said that these securely attached adults, it was not the quantity of time. And to my surprise, it was not the quality of time that they spent.
That's interesting.
It was a core memory of my parent enjoyed being around me.
Wow.
And I thought, this is so incredible, because we could actually share this sense of, if when your child walks in the room and you show a happy face, you show happiness to be around them. Perhaps something that we can create a true core memory. So in those 0 to 7 years, show happiness to be around them.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling happy, take yourself away for a minute and come back and show enjoyment of them.
Yeah.
Remember that not everything is going to go perfectly, and that's okay. Take care of yourself, because we need you to be, looked after as well as your child is. So that thing is a process. It's a relationship. And I think, really dedicate some time to yourself and understanding how you were parented, because then you can truly see how you want to parent. You're not just mirroring patterns far back. You're really giving yourself space to think, this is actually how I want to do this.
That is really so deep, the enjoyment of the actual relationship.
Amazing.
Because a lot of people are still under that impression that it's the amount of time, and then we gaslight and guilt trip ourselves into making some decisions that don't even honor our own authenticity.
Exactly.
And some people think it's the quality of time, and there you're doing some mental gymnastics, trying to pitch together the perfect moments.
Of course.
Child moments, So please, if you don't mind, I would really love to have that link, because as much as possible, I'm a scientist by background. So I love always having that evidence, to say it's not just woo, it is actually backed by full scientific facts. And I just need to talk about this book again without giving away too much. There were so many light bulb moments, but so many positively contrarian ideas that I encountered. Would you mind if I just read something? Because I really need to share this. I really need to share this. Go ahead. So it's page 60. Oh my goodness. When I read this, I took a big breath. I was like, wow, because this was so profound. It's titled The Narcissism of Parenting. I mean, who puts those two words together without triggering all the internet pop psychologists? Oh, my mom was this, my dad was this, and this is why I'm not speaking to them. But hear what Dr. Alison has to say. When we champion a mother relationship without acknowledging other attachment figures, motherhood sells you a lie. That you are the ultimate caretaker of your child's life and not the observer. This is possibly the most insidious message we're giving as parents, that you have control. And it just isn't true. Love does not mean consuming and controlling an other. I say this as I see mothers tortured with the realization that all the advice stating, just do this, and your child or you will achieve X, is simply not true and leaves us feeling like a failure. I was like, how epic. This is such a badass idea. Because when you think of narcissism and parenting, you start thinking of, my mother and my dad and all these. Just look at that angle. Please, can you speak more to that?
What I wanted to say with this is actually when we start thinking that if our child achieves or our child doesn't achieve, this is about us. That's a deeply narcissistic stance. We're not seeing the child. We're seeing them as an extension of ourselves, not as their own being. And we have to view the child as their own being. It cannot be about, you have to get top of the class because that says that I'm a good parent. We can't do that. Mm-hmm. That's not where empathy is. That's not where attachment is. We have to stand back and truly say, you are your being, and I have the best seats in the house to witness your life, and I am blessed by God that I'm allowed to do that. Yeah. But you are your being. You are your own being.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're making them an extension of us in a very kind of scientific or sort of clinical way of putting it. It's called narcissistic cathexis. It's literally making the child an object extension of yourself. And this is deeply, deeply attachment wounding. So we have to recognize I'm my being and I need to pay reverence and compassion and kindness to that. And you're your being and I pay reverence and compassion to that.
That's it. Getting to that level. And listeners, there's so many things. Like in that book, she mentions about the family genogram. Oh my God, you should do that, because that was such a lovely way of connecting the dots and looking at the patterns as opposed to listening to things in your head. Actually, bringing out things that hide out in the back of people's inner dialogue. And there's also the, I love that, about teaching boundaries and resilience, the respect and expect boundary equation. I love that as well. Mm. You gave and dedicated a section to how to talk to your neurodiverse child.
Yeah.
And another one that had a big smiley, because this was one of my rabbit hole research years back, was about the role of birth order. And I love the archetypes you created. I really, really enjoy that. Look, there's so much, guys. There's so much. Just go and get your book. And in the show notes, you get the links to where you can get the book. So I thoroughly enjoyed the book. And I really enjoyed the perspective you brought to the table, which is why I do this work, because there's always something different people can bring. And there's always someone that needs that particular form of message to uplift them, to snap them out of whatever they're going through, to say, you know what, there's still a way forward. And in the cases of where women, because this is another question I want to ask, in the cases of where, mothers have missed the boat, especially in those critical, emotionally formative years, what's your opinion on the repair? How can such women try to repair these women?
There's a lovely, I think Stephen Biddulph talks about plasticity of the brain, and it actually goes through another So it does this wonderful, wonderful leap from 0 to 2, and then it does apparently another wonderful, wonderful leap at age 13. And I think that is incredible, because you know what? It might be the case that 0 to 2 years, there was some other turmoil going on for you, whatever that was. And actually, we've got a whole nother chance. We can do this at 13. Even if you missed the boat at 13, nothing in life is ever truly broken. We can always go back and repair. And that nothing is more true of that than the mother-child bond. I think when mothers are kind of tortured with this idea that child psychology says, I should have done this, and I should have done this, and I should have done this, and I can't do anything now, that actually means that they don't try. They don't try to go re-engage with their child. They're so tortured with the shame and the guilt that they think, I can't do anything now. You can always do something. Don't worry about what that study said. You can do something. I think we need to empower mothers to feel their feelings, for sure, but also to feel that there's always something I can do.
Exactly. And I love the empowering energy with which you champion this, honestly, because a lot of the parenting experts out there, it's all about what people have missed.
Mm.
It's all about what you should be doing, so directive, rather than being inclusive. The fact that, not everybody is showing up this way.
No.
And there's loads going on in the backstage of people's lives. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for flying that flag, that there's always the possibility of repair. Now, you've written extensively about trauma. She's a trauma specialist. And you're also a mom with ADHD. There was this particular article you wrote for the British Psychological Society. You mentioned about navigating your postnatal period and how you have to stand back to look at a lot of things and actually question and challenge some natural societal assumptions. So how has your own experience with neurodivergence shaped your approach to parenting? And how can moms like me, like the group I saw your article shared in, because it's something people always talk about, people are drowning. How can neurodivergent mothers with ADHD, any other form of neurodiversity that somehow sneakily impairs our flourishing, how can we better manage emotional overwhelm without falling back into this cycle all over again?
When I first had my kids, particularly my first daughter, so it was my first child, I actually had a child who had, I think the NHS refers to it as purple crying. It was very, very intense acid reflux, so she cried a lot. Now, I was okay with this. A neurodiverse me was all right with the chaos of the feeding and the sleeping, and I kind of got on with that. But what I realised very quickly was, and so I was all right with a child that cried a lot. I could manage that. I realised society didn't like that very much. So I often found when I was in places, I was getting quite stressed. Other people were stressed that my daughter was crying. And it took me a couple of months to actually realise, but if I'm not stressed, and I know how to calm her and I know what to do, if they're stressed about it, just leave it. Trust almost my neurodivergent sort of tactic of going, that's fine. We'll manage it. Oh, we've got to change. Fine, I'll go with that. And I think that's an important metaphor, really, for neurodiverse moms, because actually we have and are blessed with so many skills. We're good in chaos. We can adapt to change. We're highly creative. For example, with the sat nav, it's going a different way, and you're like, right, okay, this is the way we're going. That's fine. That's what we're doing. I'm reacting. I'm all right with it. We're unlikely to be people who are very thrown by the idea of change. Not all neurodiversity is like this. I'm talking specifically about ADHD here. But also, if you have other forms of neurodiversity, you will have your own gifts.
Yep.
And really embrace those. I think we have to give ourselves grace. Again, I'm talking about ADHD mums here.
Yeah.
Sometimes that school WhatsApp, that's too much sensory overload for us. Yep. We need to look at the newsletter and see the dates that we need to remember. We don't need to check in on the WhatsApp. That's fine.
Yep.
We don't need to feel guilt for that. We don't need to feel that we've done a bad job for that. We're running our race and we're parenting in the way we need to parent. But I think it also means that we don't get hung up on, for example, when I turned up today and my girls didn't have the right thing for European Flag Day, I didn't feel that great about it. But I thought, okay, I drove back home and went and got them the clothes, and that's fine. Now, I think early on in my parenting journey, I would have felt crushingly embarrassed to be with the bag and being like, oh, sorry, I'm just dropping off. I'm now at a stage where I don't do that.
Yep.
I give myself the grace to say, that's fine. The girls are fine. So I think as neurodiverse parents, we have to remember our real gifts, because I guarantee you as a neurodiverse parent, there will be things and if you look inside yourself, you will notice other people get very stressed about things you probably don't.
Exactly.
And that's your gift. Doesn't make you weird, doesn't make you doing it wrong. That's your gift. Because you're creative and you're adapted to change. And there are going to be some times that it's just too much messaging. It's too much sensory overwhelm. Well, it's fine. Don't do it. Give yourself that grace and space, really.
Honestly, I mean, the thing, especially with ADHD, like you said specifically, we are masters of chaos management.
Yes.
And so I connected that dot because my previous history was as an emergency medicine doctor. And I wondered why I was not attracted to other specialties. And it was until one day I was reading a reference one of my trainers had written. And she said, Yewande is so calm in emergencies. And I'm like, that's not true. I know what's going on inside of me. I'm going through multiple protocols at the same time. But obviously, there was just something so calming about getting into those, really tricky life and death scenarios and just doing my thing. Like I practiced it. And yeah, honestly, and like with children, that concept about people's perception and over discipline as well. Like when my children are acting up and doing meltdowns, I'm like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. When you're ready, we can talk. And I just even sit down. There was sat down on the floor in the store. And people were staring at me. But I was like, you know what? I'd rather make this little mouth feel like she's not alone. In fact, a lot of psychobabble talk that he's not going to hear.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And it's going to just intensify the tantrum. So I just sat on the floor. People were just staring at me. But there's something about, neurodiversity that gives you a big spin to some things.
Yes.
And I did not appreciate that in me for a long time because in my own upbringing, that was seen as weird.
Yeah.
And when I do stuff like that, or my sense of adaptability, like how I can quickly move on to the next thing, that came into play for me in my profession. But when I'm on volunteer committees planning something and say, oh, this is that, oh, this person didn't show up, oh my goodness. And I'm like, okay, let's move on. I'm on my phone already. And they're like, Yewande, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, let's look for the next thing, I'm like, let's improvise. Do you understand? And there's someone still going on, like, I can't believe she did such a disgrace. I'm like, oh, man, let's move on. Do you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I love that when we bring it to parenting because I had to, and I'm sure you had to tell yourself that I had to say, you know what, I'm not fighting for the best mom in the world. I'm just the best mom to my child. I'm just who my child needs to be. In fact, last week, I said I was going to share it. My son just turns to me while he's eating his dinner, my younger one, 7, and says, Mommy, you're a very, very good mommy, and gives me the thumbs up. And I'm like, that was like so random. While that touched me, I was curious, where that came from. So I asked him, I said, what makes you feel like I'm a very, very good mom? He said, Mommy, you're a very good mommy. And I was like, he said, you're not too mean, but you're not too nice. Oh my goodness. I was shocked, a 7-year-old. And I was like, well, Mr. K, if you say that, then that's me.
Exactly.
And do you know, I felt so proud because I've been trying to teach my children about normalizing negative emotions. I'm not shaming them for it. I'm not shaming myself. So I have to start with me. So I said, I think somebody's getting it now, that it's okay that mommy can appear mean sometimes, but you know that it's coming from a place of wherever. And I'm not being judged for it. And I was like, wow. I said, this means so much to me. Like giving me an award, and he's so proud of himself, saying, "Yeah, my mommy is a very, very good mommy," and I was so happy. And so I think that's part of my ADHD-ness to say, you know what, it's okay for us to just be like that, apologize.
Sorry, Mom.
Do you understand? Apologize, and you know, like I said, you know, sometimes when mommy is quiet and she's not responding, it's not because she's trying to ignore you, it's because she's trying to not say things she will regret. I said, He was like, really? I said, yeah. He said, but I want you to talk to me. But like sometimes I can't just, so I can't just be perfect. Do you understand? So sometimes I just, like I said, bite my lid so that we quench down the storm.
Amazing, yeah.
And, you know, find another moment. And for any mom listening out there, just find your own way of stepping back in the situation and find your own way of feeling good for being the mom that you are. Awesome.
Absolutely. I love that.
Dr. Alison, what inspired you to write this lovely book?
I guess a lot of the things that we've been talking about. So my own experiences, sure, as a clinical psychologist, but more than anything as a mum.
Yeah.
I really wanted to write a book that made women and mums and parents in general, not just mums, feel empowered in the job they do, because it's a hard job. And I didn't think there was a lot of people, certainly not coming from a kind of clinical standpoint. And, you know, we're both called Dr. Something, and I think I see often Dr. Somethings using that, if you like, power to go and say something to tell mothers that the things they haven't done. And I don't want to do that. I really want to tell them to say, you've done a great job. Yeah, and the kids, and I'm here to empower you to do an even better one. Because, and I think it was, yeah, certainly it was obviously, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I thought I had something to offer to share in distilling very complex kind of trauma theories to people who maybe that's not their kind of research background. But more than anything, I wanted to write a book that empowered mums.
Wow. Thank you so much for doing that. And did you struggle with imposter syndrome when trying to write this? Because, you know, you're putting out a message that is not common at all.
I mean, I certainly struggled with the idea of should you be writing a book? And I think that's probably true for a lot of people who write books. Do I have something to say? And I also think, particularly when we're neurodiverse and we're ADHD, do all my scattergun thoughts, will they translate to people? You know, will people
parents? Yeah.
People think pick this book up and think, what on earth is this? But yeah, I definitely did. But I think it also kind of goes back to that idea of empowering mums with ADHD to say, embrace your own gifts. And one of them, often with those of us with ADHD, is creativity. So embrace that and be brave and put that out into the world.
Oh, thank you for saying yes to yourself. Oh,
thank you.
Oh, we're better off for it. And the final question, I can't believe this is over. We stay here forever. So there's this concept I came across, it's not original to me, called the dash. The dash simply is the small dash between your date of birth and the date people transition. And you know, that little dash actually encapsulates an entire lifetime and your life story. And you know, there was something you were saying earlier, I'd forgotten to chip in, you know, the thing about research and statistics and the code. But I always tell people, the statistics don't have to be your story.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be your story. So thinking about your own dash now, so this is the hot shit question. Just imagine, I'm sure you've probably read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The opening thing that says, oh, just imagine you were at your own funeral. Sorry to be so morbid for people who don't think about that. But just imagine, what kind of things would you imagine being said about you would resonate with what you deeply see and know about yourself and your life, and what you perceive to be your life purpose and your contribution, your passions, your identity, anything. You don't have to answer immediately. Think about it. You can pause. But what would be the story of your dash down when somebody's reading out? You'd be like, oh yeah, that was me. Oh,
I think I would like to be someone who, I think community is a really big thing for me, actually. I've actually lived in a number of different countries and cultures, and I've really loved learning about people. I just love learning hearing people's stories. And I think that's another thing. I think I love finding community. I love hearing about community. And I think motherhood is a community. I wanted to create a community in this book. And also I'm very aware that every single person that you ever pass on the street has a story to tell. And that is so beautiful. I often say to people that my job is honestly, because people often say to me, oh, it must be really hard to do your job. And I say to them, sometimes I hear the horror of humanity, but I cannot tell you the amount of times I hear stories of the beauty of humanity.
Yes.
And honestly, for me, I know Brene Brown, just bringing her back, I know she always says she's a storyteller. I like to think I'm a story listener. And
You.
I just love listening to and having the privilege to listen to the stories of other people. I often feel like we're talking about the data and the statistics. Actually, funnily enough, even though I'm a psychologist and we're a social science by profession, I feel that I learned so much more from not the data, not the stats, not the quantitative, what have you. It's about, I just listen to stories. And for me, that's everything. So I think my dash would be, I was a story listener. I became a storyteller in writing books, but I really feel so strongly about the power of story, but also the power of community. Mums, we've been talking about motherload, and mums today lack community. They lack the feeling of sisterhood support. And if I could give anything to mums, it would be that.
Thank you so much. Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm trying to be my cool, chill self, but
for
bringing so much light in terms of actually a lighter perspective, but also light in terms of the lifting of that load that this topic evokes, when people just think about it. And I hope someone out there realizes you're less alone in this journey.
Yes.
Now tell us, where can we find you, online or offline?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm on Alison McClymount on Insta. You can find me on dralisonmcclymount.com. You can find my book on Amazon, Waterstones, and I'm sure there's another one, and I'll give you the link. But you can find me where they sell good books. But yes, you can find me on Insta. You can find me on my website there as well.
And dear gentle listener, I hope you heard that right. Please make sure you get a copy of her book, How to Help Your Child Cope with NP. Trust me, it's a practical book. It's full of new insights. At least I'm someone that is always going on rabbit hole studying stuff. There was a time I thought I wanted to do a master's in interpersonal neurobiology. Because I was so interested in the attachment theory and how that affects adult success. Yeah. So thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time, for your wisdom, for your empathy, for your perspective, for your courage, for your bravery, for doing this, for writing that, for putting it out there. That is a testament, and part of your dash should be that somebody can pick this up 50 years from now in whatever copy it is. I remember that, someone spoke out and someone was a compassionate witness to the inner life of a mother. Thank you. You've already achieved that goal, but I know you're going to take it to another level as you continue doing this work. And thank you so much for your time. And so that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.